Imagine being born into so much money and power that even after destroying your country's economy and your family's thousands of years old reputation, you still think you will always be the protected and pampered son. This was exactly the situation for Prince Andrew. But all of that came crashing down when the news finally reached him. What was that news? How did it hit Andrew so hard? And who was the one that had to deliver it? Watch this video all the way to the end to find out. Prince Andrew. He was born into a life that was built to keep him safe from ever facing consequences. He was given a fancy title and a public image that turned his mistakes into small footnotes and turned his over-the-top lifestyle into something people just expected from him. For decades that setup worked perfectly for him. The fancy uniforms, the big parades, and all the special access did more than just look good. They gave him the feeling that he could do anything. Then one small thing started to unravel. That small thing turned into something much bigger. And that bigger thing pulled everything apart. The first thing most people remember is the interview, not the actual facts in it, not the carefully practiced denials, but the way he carried himself in it. He sat in front of millions of people and tried to talk his way out of being seen with some very bad people. He gave a strange list of excuses. The Pizza Express story, the claim that he could not sweat, the weird claim that he could not remember things. The interview did not just hurt him. It showed the whole world a man who had never once learned how to truly answer for the things he did. It handed people a weapon to use against him, and they used it fast. The reaction from the public was instant and brutal. Overnight, the image people had built up of him as a war hero and beloved royal son completely fell apart and turned into jokes and disbelief. That moment made the whole scandal feel real, in a way that the accusations alone never had. What came after was not a slow slide downhill. It was fast, and the people in charge wanted nothing to do with him anymore. His titles were taken away. His special roles and connections were stripped, and his right to speak or act on behalf of the crown completely disappeared. The royal family did not hold a big public trial. They just acted quietly and quickly. The special privileges that had made up his whole identity were taken from him, not with a big dramatic announcement, but with quiet paperwork and finality. He could no longer sign his name and have it carry the same power it once did. He could not walk into a room and expect people to stand and salute, because the title that came with all of that had been silently taken back. The palace's decision felt like a verdict, without ever needing a court or a judge. What made things even worse for him was that new evidence kept showing up, even after he told the world it could not be true. An email came out from 2011, in which after a photo connected to the scandal was published, he reportedly wrote to Jeffrey Epstein, saying they were in this together. That was not just a sign of loyalty. It was a sign of being involved and wanting to protect each other. That private message sat very badly next to his public claim that he had cut ties with Epstein a long time ago. That private email showed that his apology, which he never really properly gave anyway, meant absolutely nothing. It showed a man who was comfortable being close to dishonest and dangerous people, and who still refused to own up. When the truth finally came looking for him, the public, which had once cheered for him, completely turned against him. Polls now show a country that wants whatever is left of his special status completely removed. Most people across all age groups gave a very simple and clear answer. They do not want him representing them. They do not want him anywhere near the institution that once lifted him up. That is not just a small detail. It is the combined judgment of an entire society that refuses to connect the image of royalty with the accusations and the years of secrecy. The numbers are very direct. They take centuries of politeness toward royals and turn it into one clear public refusal. Behind closed doors the stories kept piling up. And none of them helped his case at all. Former workers described a man who expected everyone around him to bend and change to suit his every wish. The story that really stuck in people's minds is about teddy bears. 72 of them lined up in a very specific order. A maid was actually trained on exactly how to arrange them, if they were not placed in exactly the right spots. His anger could get enormous and scary. Small mean behaviors like this do more than just give people something to gossip about. They reveal who a person truly is deep down. They show a total refusal to be responsible for the petty and cruel way he treated people around him his whole adult life. They show what power really looks like when nobody important is watching. Vanity Fair and other outlets that talked to palace workers found that story not silly or unimportant, but very telling and meaningful. It fit into a much bigger pattern of behavior, and that pattern is what turns a scandal into a full story about moral failure. It is easy to point to one email, one interview, one money settlement, and one accusation. But patterns do not come from one moment. Patterns build up over time, the way small bad behaviors stack on top of each other, until they form a clear picture of who someone really is. He went from bragging about his privileges to using them to get away with things. He built close relationships with people who had dirty money and dark secrets. He refused to even think about the real human cost to the people who got pulled into his world. Each new thing that came out did not reset or restart the story. It just added more weight to it. And then came the attempts to get his status back. These were not humble and sincere apologies. They read more like requests. Requests to be let back into the fancy events and important circles he believed were his by birth and by right. Authors who have studied the royal family and his place in it now say the answer is no. One biographer said it very directly. The royal machine will not bring him back. His private behavior, the small daily habits, the constant pattern of acting entitled, have turned him into someone the institution needs to quietly manage, rather than proudly show off. His whole world has shrunk down to a lodge and a garden. He plays golf and watches television, while the whole country debates whether to strip away the last of his titles. It is a life where the most important part was removed and can never be put back. This is where part 1 must leave the audience, not with a soft ending that makes him look better, but with the image of a man whose protection is gone, and whose first instinct is to lash out. The palace has decided he cannot represent the monarchy. The public has turned its back on him. Private messages keep coming out to show just how far apart his public words and his real behavior have always been. He has the look of someone who has just been told the one thing he could never bring himself to accept. He has the look of someone who still thinks he can make a deal with a world that is completely done listening to him. So we end on the question that keeps people watching and keeps this story moving forward. When a life is built entirely on privilege and being given permission to do anything, and then that permission gets taken away, what is left of the man who truly believed he was untouchable? The answer will be harder to face than any accusation. It will be the slow and painful destruction of his reputation, the steady march of new evidence coming out, and the quiet decisions being made inside the palace. That will decide whether there is any chance of something like forgiveness ever being possible behind palace walls. Before we get to the point where we understand whether he truly sees himself as untouchable or not, we need to take a better look at just how arrogant this man really is. If you think that the mean and childish things he did behind closed doors do not matter, then you are wrong, because behind the big public scandals, behind all the newspaper headlines, there is a pattern, a personality being shown for what it truly is. A man who believed that everything around him existed only for his own comfort and convenience. He treats them basically like servants. He can boss around whenever he feels like it. That is how one royal biographer described him. In the book The Rise and Fall of the House of York, workers say he would call his security officer over, just to go pick up his golf balls. Like some spoiled little kid who wants his toys back. He would drop a tissue on the floor, and expect someone 4 floors below him to come pick it up. Someone else opened his curtains. Someone else did everything. What does dignity even mean, when you have that level of entitlement? He did not just demand things to be done precisely. He demanded things that made absolutely no sense. One man was fired because he had a mole on his face. Another one was let go because he wore a nylon tie. Workers who broke rules they did not even know existed found themselves humiliated, not for doing anything seriously wrong, but for tiny little imperfections, as if he believed the entire world around him was supposed to be a perfect background set just for him. There are reports that he would call someone a complete idiot over something as ridiculous as not properly referring to the Queen Mother. The insult was thrown out like it was nothing, not just behind the scenes. This was real sharp and public enough to end up written down in the official record. These are not just weird little quirks. They are repeated and consistent, happening everywhere all the time. Cruel, bossy, and explosive in his temper. Workers lived in constant fear that a sneeze, a mispronounced title, a tie that was not right, or a mole on someone's face could cost them their job or ruin their entire day. These stories hit hard like heavy rocks. They show that when nobody important is watching, he is petty, mean, and enjoys making people feel small. And then there is the public. Regular people who once saw him as royalty, as the Queen's beloved son. They do not see royalty anymore. They see a man full of himself. They see a grown adult being kept alive by golden privilege, while still throwing tantrums over stuffed animals. The teddy bear story went viral, not because it was cute, but because it was just disturbing and gross. Dozens of bears carefully arranged, with photos taken of the exact setup, and laminated cards made to show how they were supposed to look. People all over social media mocked him endlessly. A man with 50 or 60 teddy bears, and absolutely no sense of how ridiculous he looks. Here is what people are saying online. Andrew is completely out of touch. Rude to his staff. Nothing more than a spoiled and entitled grown child. A man-child. Puffed up and full of himself. Totally helpless without his fancy titles. And the thing that might be best or worst, depending on how you look at it, the jokes and the mockery. Teddy bears lined up like holy objects, with a photo guide to show their exact positions. He would rather point out someone else's mole than ever face his own wrongdoing. This is not just gossip. These are real accounts from real people. Workers who walked away in tears. Security officers dragged into totally pointless tasks. People who gave their time and energy to serve royalty, and got nothing back but contempt. And what does he do about all of it? He does not stop and think. He does not say sorry. He quietly licks his wounds in private, rages when no one can see it, and waits around expecting everything to be given back to him. Even as his whole world keeps getting smaller and smaller, he holds on to his privileges, like they are a suit of armor protecting him, not realizing they have become his prison. Because power is like a drug, and for some people it never stops pulling at them. Even when the whole world has changed the rules, he holds on to a place to stay, a suite that used to be connected to Buckingham, his expectations and his privileges. He flat out refuses to shrink. He refuses to step aside. He keeps insisting that the palace will still give in to him, even though the palace, the king, and the entire public have all locked the door on him. Then came the money problems. His allowance got nearly cut off completely, and his security was pulled away. The king pushed to make him downsize everything. These are not just budget decisions. They are sending a message. They are saying out loud, "You are not the person you thought you were. One detail makes the same point very clearly. He kept fighting to stay at Royal Lodge. He still fights for space. Both physical space and a place in the story. He wants his address. He wants his presence to mean something. He wants the past to still hold a place for him, even though he has lost it completely. Because what is worse than losing power is telling yourself it is only temporary, and that you can find a way to take it back. Pride forces you to believe that lie. But reality is a wound that just will not stop opening back up. When he thought the scandal was the worst of it, this next part shows it was only the very beginning. The beginning of a full revealing of his true character. His cruelty, his childish outbursts wrapped up in the language of royal expectations, and every small petty rage, every embarrassing demand, every time someone got fired over a mole, is not a small thing. It is brick by brick building a wall between him and any real shot at being forgiven. So the question we end this part with is this: when being kind, decent, and humble are what is truly at stake,